Good evening, fellow Titans, it's Glitch, and welcome back to another City of Titans related video. In this one, I shall be discussing City of Titans' latest update that came as of May 30th, 2018 regarding Masteries. Now, for those that have seen my last video on Powers and Archetypes, you would know that I briefly touched upon Masteries in that video, but the information was actually pretty outdated. I'll admit, and it's even discussed in this update that the last time the MWM team has even gone near Masteries has actually been those 4 years ago when they first discussed it in their Kickstarter. So while the information is outdated, a lot of it hasn't really changed apart from the fact that most of the masteries that were provided for each archetype were rounded up to at least 5, and you would be able to master in one of 3 of the 5, but now it seems like they've strictly have gone for it to just be 3, and to make it, I guess, a little bit easier and get rid of any unnecessary masteries that probably weren't of any real importance, I guess. But anyways, a lot of the information other than that has gone unchanged. You still will go access your first mastery at level 5, the next one being at 15, and then 25. You're also expected to hit your archetype's full potential by level 25. I think this is probably a best trade-off because, well, with a slated level cap of 50, it's probably best your character is at some sort of absolute threshold or peak by a certain level point. Usually it's once you hit your level cap, you're expected to probably get a hold of different gear or modify your equipment so that you're performing at peak perfection, or at least what you would consider peak perfection for yourself and your character. But yes, that seems to be the overall gist. In the upcoming slides, I have actually provided charts discussing how these are going to be handled now currently, as well as the current update has provided a list of they've gone into detail regarding not detail, but the MWM team has just done brief little descriptions of how certain masteries will be handled and what to expect from certain tiers within those masteries. I know that sounds confusing, but the visual aids I provide will likely help, because I know how sometimes explaining things verbally can be very confusing, especially if you're somewhat of a fast talker like me, but the visual aids should help. But anyways, on to our first slide, which is going to be Stalwart masteries. Now remember, Stalwart is supposed to be our tank class, so the mastery sets we have been provided and have gone unchanged for the most part is Living Target, Bruiser, and Battle Leader. You will, and from what I can speculate, is you will master into one of these 3 categories when you hit level 5, and essentially you will be provided with each tier. Now, if I can assume correctly, let's say you're level 5 and you want to master into Bruiser first. Alright, these tiers 1 through 3 are going to be what you are going to be looking at, and then when you hit level 15, you can pick either Battle Leader or Living Target, and then go through each tier just like this. So, the description for Stalwart, specifically Bruiser is for the more offensive minded Stalwart. Alright, so if you're more of an offense based tank, you will master into Bruiser. And Punishing Blow, which is the tier 1 power for a Bruiser, it debuffs an enemy's evasion and defense. So imagine going up against someone who's probably super agility. Well, this is probably going to be the best thing to master in, especially if you're going up against those kind of characters, because Punishing Blow is going to debuff their evasion as well as their defense. So that sounds like it's going to be pretty fun. The whole idea of a tank is that they are supposed to be redirecting the attention onto from most of the group and onto them. So just imagine going up against someone who can just basically evade and dodge most attacks. That's going to be something that's going to be beneficial to your allies and the rest of your group, or even yourself. Breakdown will debuff resistance. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Don't think that really needs any real explanation. Destabilizing Force will add a disorient effect to your attacks and deliver additional damage to controlled targets. So again, another self-explanatory one. Also, it's important that I note that all these archetypes, they're only having one mastery set being highlighted in this update. So as a result, not all of them are being explained fully. So these are just giving us a sneak peek into what they would expect, how, and more or less these are basically giving us an example of how and what to expect these mastery sets to be built upon release. So we will then be moving on to our next one, which is Enforcer Masteries. So Enforcers, for this one, Surprise Strike, I believe, was highlighted, and thus Surprise Strike is for Enforcers looking to take advantage of their opponents. So the first one is Waylay in Tier 1, and this apparently, and from the description given, says it will give a bonus to accuracy and crit range against unsuspecting opponents. So Surprise Strike, in case you guys remember, in the last video I did, I actually said that Surprise Strike was actually going to be the mastery set that is dealt around getting some bonuses, probably crit bonuses, to unsuspecting targets. So that is the mastery set to expect from with Surprise Strike. So Waylay Tier 1 would be based around getting a bonus on accuracy and crit range on these said unsuspecting targets. And then there is Exploitive Attack, which will increase the crit range against the controlled enemy. So yeah, alright, so yeah, basically if you hit an enemy with some form of crit, and they are just happen to be controlled by anyone, or even yourself by using some of your other powers, depending on what you decide to roll into after your primary power set, you would be getting an increased crit range. So there's that. And finally, Headhunter, which is probably my favorite. It gives additional crit bonuses against higher ranked enemies. So this doesn't necessarily mean you'll actually like defeat a bad guy in like maybe a couple hits, but your crits are increased when you like I know I'm basically repeating this, but yeah, your crits are basically increased by a percentage when you are to fight against enemies that are of higher ranks. Now the one they give here in parentheses are for ranks above Mook. So I'm assuming Mook is probably like your generic henchman that will probably like take up an entire room if before you get to the boss. So there's that. Now moving on to our ranged masteries. Now what was highlighted in this one was actually Suppression. So our Tier 1 power, which is with Covering Fire, it will cause your target to miss more often, and that's the end of that one. So does that really need to be explained at all? Pin Down. This will slow down the movement of your targets. It's probably going to be real fun to use. There's nothing more beneficial than being able to slow down your targets, especially as a ranged character. And then there is finally Pin Down. No, not Pin Down. I just said that. A Suppressive Fire, which will cause your enemies to have a less of a chance to crit, but will also make it and those near to it do less damage if affected by Covering Fire, while those that are affected by Pin Down have their recharge debuffed. So I bet that was a lot to take in, but for the most part, this is basically saying your enemy will have a less likely chance to deal a crit against you. However, the bit of the downside is that those near will do less damage if they're affected by Covering Fire, which we already said this will cause them targets to miss more often. Now, I think it's important that it doesn't specify whether or not these targets can include enemies or allies. So I would want to think this is strictly for the enemies, but I'm not sure. We could see in the future. And while those affected by Pin Down have their recharge debuff, I think that's kind of a benefit in itself, because, well, if you're being affected by Pin Down, you're having your movement reduced by a percentage, or just slowed down in general, and you're also having your recharge debuff. So, well, I think that's a benefit in and of itself, because usually the powers that have recharges on them are one of the more heavy-hitting powers, so this is probably a benefit, but we don't know. That's the mystery of the Masteries. Wow, start saying that 3 times fast. Moving on to our Guardian Masteries. What was highlighted in this set was Saving Grace. So, our Tier 1 powered Umbrage. This increases the buffs of your allies as the lower their health becomes. Alright, so your buffs that your allies are using, or buffs that were put on your allies, are increased whenever they are to take damage or are losing, the lower the health becomes. I love that. I love that. Disgrace will increase any debuffs on healthier enemies. Alright, so healthier enemies, I'm assuming this will basically mean enemies that are still at full or partial or at half health. This will definitely will increase any debuffs put on by our controller groups, or even the light debuffs that may come in other archetypes, or people using different power sets within their supposed archetypes. And then there is Salvation, which will cause a heal to occur whenever an enemy is defeated by an ally's critical attack. And if an ally is to fall in battle to a crit, Salvation returns them to battle. So, in other words, you are healed whenever a ally hits an enemy with a crit and successfully defeats them. And if they are to die or be defeated in a fight to a crit, heavy hit to a crit, the Salvation will bring them back to life. So, essentially, it's a res. And that's it for Guardian. And we will then be moving on to our final one, which is Operator. So, Operator, what was highlighted in this one was Focus. And it can benefit a solo operator, or in other words, a solo crowd control character. And it is definitely a boon to the team player. So, what was highlighted in this one was Attack into Submission. This will increase the duration of control effects on an enemy each time they are attacked. Self-explanatory, don't think I need to explain it too much, but the control effect that you place on an enemy, the time duration on it is increased each time they are attacked. So just about as long as everyone doesn't stop hitting them, I'm pretty sure this will pretty much wear out the enemy until they are defeated. Then there is Quicken Resolve, which provides allies near a controlled enemy that is hit with a recharge buff. So, alright, so they allies are hit with a recharge buff when they are near a controlled enemy. So, there's that. And then finally, there is Payback, which will give back a portion of power to allies attacking a controlled target. So, another self-explanatory one. If you guys remember in my last video, I said power is basically the game's version of energy. So you get power back whenever you are attacking a controlled target. So yeah, that is pretty much it, you guys. As far as the updates go, yeah, that's it. That was City of Titans update for May 30th. Usually they put these updates out during the beginning of the next month. So usually it'd be like the first, or maybe I would think the first or second week of the next month. So in this case, June, usually they would release an update like this, yeah, in the upcoming week, or this current week. But this is rather early, so pretty different. So yeah, I think that's about it. There's actually I will actually provide another link in the description that is a lot more in-depth towards further masteries that are to be, well, further masteries, but I believe it's actually highlighting the other mastery sets that weren't discussed heavily in this video or in this update. I'll be providing a link to that in the description below, as well as the multiple different links to how you can donate to City of Titans and check out their stuff. You know, if you guys have been looking, I've always put in there, there's website, their Patreon, their, what else do they have? Instagram, Facebooks, Twitter. So, yeah, guys, that is about it for this update. I think this is a relatively quick video. It's kind of long, but yeah, that's about it for now. Remember, I am going to be releasing the Augment and Refinements video probably in the coming week or so. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, that has been it for this City of Titans update. And I'll also, like I did with the last video, I'll put this little slideshow demonstration in the description below so you guys can actually see it for yourself if you don't feel like actually going to the the website to actually go see it. But I'll be putting multiple links in the descriptions below, so you can actually refer to either this slideshow or the links themselves for further information. But until then, this is Glitch signing off, and I will hope to see you all in City of Titans, and remember to answer the call.